AI fakery. We've heard of deep fakes. You know, it sort of reminds me of the old, is this the person to whom I am speaking? Things just aren't necessarily what they seem. And there's a lot of that going on. And this is the really dark side of AI, where you're not really sure who is real and who is not. So I want to briefly go through 4 things: birds, books, hands, and scams. Should be a poem in there somewhere. Birds. Have you seen this? Birds aren't real. If you have not watched this TED Talk here on the YouTube, I highly recommend it because it's hilarious, and yet it's dead serious. Birds aren't real. Did you know that birds are really surveillance drones? Because the US government killed billions of birds so they could replace them with surveillance drones. And you can tell this because they recharge on power lines. You've all seen them up there, right? And you know, once you get this, well, it's everywhere, right? Every state has a state bird. Think of the logos. They're the national seal of the US. It's a bird. Birds aren't real. Well, this was a spoof that was designed to explore what happens, what is it that makes a conspiracy really take hold? And they tried to use this idea that was just absolutely intrinsically ridiculous. Of course, birds are real. And yet, the appalling thing is that people fell for it. Books. AI can write books. There's a question about whether Amazon could, in fact, recognize when a book was written by artificial intelligence rather than a human being. And yet, they're not doing it. Travel guides. The travel guides that are AI written are deeply flawed. There's one travel agency that has started stressing that their guides are written by people who have actually been to these places, as opposed to an AI written thing that is created out of who knows what. But it's definitely not an actual person who's been in the actual place. And then, of course, you get into all of the copyright concerns. Not only are books AI written, are they copyrightable? Basically, no, they're not. What is the training source that is being used to create these AI written books? And the issue of fraud, where established authors have discovered that there are books under their name as author being sold on Amazon. It's not their book and it was AI written. So it's outright fraud. Hands. This is about images. How do you tell if an image is AI generated? And for years, well, for years, the last couple of years, one of the things that people have pointed to is, well, AI can't do hands very well. If you think about the training set on which images come from, okay, if you think about art, frequently the hands are not obvious. And so this is the kind of thing you see, that the hands and the fingers, they're all wrong. I am of the firm belief that this is going to get fixed because people know it. So people are going to go back and find more images of hands on which to train the image creating softwares. Deep fakes, oh man, they're getting better all the time. I can see why people might be upset by the Pope in a big puffer jacket. I think it's pretty innocuous. I think it's actually kind of funny. But when you get into some of these other things, it's not funny at all. We are now getting to the point where there are voices that sound like they're somebody else. We have AI generated newsreaders. You can have a synthetic AI created host to do your training sessions for you. You can do translation into other languages. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not. If you have a group of students that you're teaching or employees in different countries that you want to have them in training sessions and their English is not all that great, there are software programs out there that will allow you to speak in your language, which for most of us at Internet Librarian, that's going to be English, and it is translated into another language. So I could sit here and you could watch my mouth form English language words, but suppose I wanted to do it in Japanese. I could go to something like heygen.com, and it could put it into Japanese, and it would change how my mouth worked to form the Japanese words. For training purposes, this is fantastic. But you can see that it could be repurposed for a darker purpose as well, which for us means there's a huge market out there that we should be tapping into. We should be stressing video literacy, all kinds of media literacy, news literacy. It's not just information literacy anymore. Scams. She's not real. There are hundreds of names that match this image. They all run scam operations, and they are all gemologists, and they are all in Turkey. And how could that possibly be? Want to sell a vehicle? This cropped up for me actually last week. One of my neighbors who almost fell for this scam. Now, honestly, I'll admit to bias here. When I think about people getting scammed online, I think, oh, well, they're probably not all that intelligent. They're not all that computer literate. They're probably a bit gullible. My neighbor deals in high finance. He's got an MBA. He's highly sophisticated when it comes to online. And yet he wanted to sell a motorcycle. Potential buyer said, oh, I'm only about 2 hours away from you. And that's key because a lot of these come back with, I'm only 2 hours away from you. The potential buyer wanted the VIN number. Okay. Wouldn't accept that you had just read off the VIN number. Wanted you to go to a specific site, even though there are free sites that can do this. Wants you to use a paid site. Wants you to put in your credit card. Oh, think there's anything wrong with that? We literally stopped him as he was inputting his credit card. And we're going, no, stop, don't do that. Really, seriously, don't do that. What happens if this is somebody in your library? What if it's a student? What if it's a member of the public in the public library? You really have to do something about this type of scam and keeping people from getting their credit card information stolen.